Welcome in the latest episode of the Five on the Floor podcast on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Make sure to check out 5reasonsports.com. Spell it out, F-I-V-E, reasonsports.com. Of course, at 5, the number Reason Sports Twitter, and the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. We're going to get to today's very solemn episode here in a second. I'll be joined by Alphonse Sidney. Before we do, though, I want to tell you about one of the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, the Seltzer Mayberg Law Firm. You can find them at onecalllegal.com. Spell it out, O-N-E, calllegal.com. They've got someone there with legal advice for you 24 hours a day, and they have best attorneys in South Florida handling everything from immigration to personal injury to sports law to slip and falls, traffic tickets. They handle everything at the Seltzer Mayberg Law Firm. They're located right off of I-95 in the Miami Shores area, just before the Golden Glades interchange. So contact them at onecalllegal.com. Again, that's O-N-E, calllegal.com. And now, today's episode.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a Miami Heat and NBA podcast from Ethan Skolnick with Alphonse Sidney, a.k.a. Alf954. Brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back. I'm in the arena. I'm in a photo room in the back of the media room, excuse me. Apologize for the cough. I know people are getting sensitive about this. I've had an allergy.
I was about to say it. Cancel the podcast. Postpone.
Yeah, well, I don't want to get you sick, and I don't want to make light of it. No, I'm not. I have an allergy. You know that. I sometimes cough a little bit here on the pod. But essentially, this was a weird night. Alf is home, decided not to come tonight for his own personal reasons. Alex could not make it either. So I was alone here, one on the floor, and I just came from the floor. And it was a weird night, and we're not really going to talk much about the game. I mean, the game was a disaster. They scored 40 points against the Hornets in the first quarter. Kendrick Nunn looked terrific. DJJ looked fantastic. Bam was on his way to a double-digit assist game. Duncan Robinson didn't shoot well, but still 40 points in the first quarter. And then they just got throttled the rest of the way. I mean, every lineup that Eric threw out there didn't work. Dragic wasn't good. I don't know why Solomon Hill played 23 minutes when Kelly Olynyk couldn't get off the bench. It's just a weird night. But look, everything now is about coronavirus and about what it's doing to the world. And now that has, to a certain degree, infected the NBA. So the news came out. You know, I was saying Alf all day that the league's going to end up having to suspend. It's just too many dates, too many players around people. When you started banning the media from the locker room, and it was like, okay, that's the measure we're going to take. And I'm not trying to take that personally, but that wasn't going to do it.
It's a half measure. You're talking about high fives on the way to the court, arenas full of 20,000 people. It's an international game, international players, international fans. It's a lot going on. It really is. Right. And banning media from being in the locker room, it doesn't stop. I mean, the rest of the human interaction that just goes on, which is actually one of the reasons I stayed home tonight, because and you said personal reasons. I'm not afraid to say it. I have asthma. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I realized I was actually on a flight home from Philadelphia on Monday, and what normally happens on flights, because there's just not a lot of air circulation, I get moments of shortness of breath, and I started panicking a little bit, and I always just have to calm myself down and just say and breathe and be easy, and then it comes back. But I reminded myself, like, dude, you have asthma. Right. Like we make it sound like this is only affecting 80-year-olds, but I have a respiratory illness.
Right.
So
you couldn't be here tonight, and that's and I noticed it on the way down. Like, I come down from Fort Lauderdale, and I've been talking all year about how the traffic is worse than it's been ever since I can remember because of whatever it is they're doing to 395. But tonight it was a breeze. Like, it was a breeze getting here. And I know it was Charlotte on a midweek game, but like it is the easiest to get here tonight that it's been the whole year. And you could just feel it. Like, this felt like the end. When I was walking around, because I know, I've been here a long time, obviously, and I know a lot of the ushers and the security people and everything, and everybody the whole night was saying to me, have a good vacation, have a good year. And this is before the suspension came down. Now, they didn't know anything, but we all knew something, right? And then, your file. So I knew there was going to be a suspension. You couldn't continue with this. It's clear. I don't want to get into politics on this podcast. You and I are on the same place on this. It's clear that this administration is not capable of handling this. In fact, doesn't want to handle it. they basically want to say nothing's happening so that the stock market goes back up and the guy in office gets reelected or imposes martial law so he stays there until he dies.
I can't wait for these YouTube comments.
Happening.
I can't.
Well, I mean, it is what it is. Okay, I'm not saying any administration would handle this well, but I just know this one won't. So basically, you have a situation now where this has been kind of diminished, and I think that the leagues in some way are acting more responsibly than our government is. But at some point, something was going to get imposed, and so. To me, I think the season's over. I don't think they're going to play basketball again this year. I think the most likely scenario is they're having this Board of Governors call tomorrow, another conference call. Eric Spoelstra, who, by the way, came to the media room today. The locker room wasn't supposed to be open with it. We were supposed to get players. I understand why not. Spoelstra answered 2 questions, was asked another, and they said, look, I don't have anything else to say. They were not about basketball. They were about the suspension of the season, and he left. I've posted those on Twitter and on Instagram. So I just think he talked about how there's a call tomorrow. I think it'll be sort of indefinitely suspended, maybe a 2 to 3 week time frame in their heads. And then they're going to come back in 2 to 3 weeks and do it for another 2 to 3 weeks. And then after that, it's just going to be shut down. I think logistically it's too difficult to come back, but I also think the danger of it. And let's get to the real crux of what happened tonight, the Rudy Gobert situation, which I had another media person kind of gum at me tonight for my tweet, but I believe this. Okay, you can hope that Rudy Gobert is fine and gets healthy because he's contracted the coronavirus now, and you can also say that he was an idiot. Not for contracting it, right? Not for contracting it, Alf. Because I'm not saying you're an idiot for contracting. Anybody can contract anything. For what he did, if you haven't seen it on 3-4 days. I'm not saying this is how, and I saw your tweet. It's not how he can. I don't know. It's how he contracted it.
It's not because the incubation period is. Someone put 4 days. I saw 10 to 14. It happened. So what he did. The backstory on it is, they had this press conference where they had the media sitting at a comfortable distance away to protect the players from coronavirus. And at the end of the interview, he proceeds as a joke to touch the entire table and to touch every single microphone. Like, ha, 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 coronavirus, not that big of a deal. He made other comments before about this isn't a big of a deal. Like, listen, I was on Light Skin Opinions. I've been on Twitter saying this is, I think we're overblowing this. But at the same time, like, you have to be responsible because as a healthy 20-something-year-old, you're not the one at risk. So now it's not that he got the virus from touching microphones. It's the fact that somebody had to go collect those microphones afterwards. Right? Somebody had to clean up that table. The fact is, and either way, he might have spread it, but just to be so cravenly stupid about it, that's where people are mad about it.
Right. So it can be both. I mean, he can be an idiot, and at the same point, you can say, I hope he feels better, and he hope he gets better. But to have a high-profile player, to have that situation, and here's the other thing I noticed. And look, the players didn't know about the suspension of the season until they got back to the locker room. That's what Spoelstra said. The news had made it through the arena to a certain degree because I was turning around talking to people and saying, see you next year. And they were like, yeah, we just saw. I mean, everybody's on Twitter in this arena. So they knew what happened. They saw it Woj and Shams. The players didn't find out till later. But I'm watching the players on the court, and they're all hugging each other after the game. And it's what we were talking about. I don't blame them, but it's like there's certain rituals that come with this sport. Like you said, the handshakes, the throwing towels, to the fans, and you can't just stop all that stuff. The
wiping of sweat and throwing it to a ball boy.
Well, on our podcast where we talked to Jay Crowder about the handshake with Jimmy Butler, like this is just part of the game. Like there's a lot of contact. Okay. And that's why it was a little offensive that basically the league decided the unwashed media are the ones that we're going to keep away from. When I'm like, these players are all around each other all the time. Like it felt to me, honestly, and I said this, and people got said, like an access grab to a certain degree, because we know that whenever the leagues take access for some reason or another, it never comes back. So, like, I'm fully anticipating we'll never be in a locker room again, okay? Which, again, I've been in enough locker rooms in my life, okay? I don't need to be in the locker room. But the reason you like going in the locker room as a reporter is because you get to build relationships in there, because you talk to guys when they're not being interviewed on camera and other things. And so that's a lot of the way I've done my business for the last 20-plus years. It's probably over also, okay? But it seemed to me like an access grab at first to just single out the media. At this point, I think the NBA has acknowledged it's not just that, okay? That's not going to be enough, all right? We're going to have to do something else. And so it just leaves you with this very sort of empty feeling because I think the NBA has acted responsibly. Spoelstra said that after the game. But at the same point, it's like you and I are sitting here and others, okay, for months and months and months obsessing about a basketball team, for better or worse, toy department of life, right, is sports. But we're doing this, and then it's like, okay, none of it meant anything. Because none of it meant anything because basically the season's probably over. It was a developmental season for a lot of the Heat players. Trades they made at the deadline to try to get themselves in better position don't end up mattering. Now you look at it and you're like, would you have made the Justice Winslow trade? Maybe not. Probably to get under the cap. There's a lot of things that you and I think can talk about with the NBA gone about where we go forward. But obviously it's going to be more challenging. There's no question about that. And obviously there's an empty feeling here. I talking again to all these people as I was walking downstairs and everybody just looks sad, because they know, they're not going to be back here Friday, Saturday, or probably the rest of the season.
Well, I mean, I was just in the group, one of my group chats, and there's a guy in the group chat talking about he's probably going to get late because he's in the hospitality industry. He's going to get laid off for the next few months. You have people that work in these arenas that aren't going to be able to work.
That's the untold story here. Yeah, absolutely.
I have 6 work trips. I travel a lot for work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have at least 6 work trips over the next 8 weeks that I've had to cancel flights and hotel stays for.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of those work trips are sales for me.
Right.
Every single one of those work trips is a meeting with a retail chain or a huge distributor where I'm trying to, make money. And these things, like there's one trip in every summer we go to Vegas for an event called Cosmoprof. Cosmoprof is one of the biggest events in the world. There's an entire Chinese pavilion. There's an Italian pavilion. Between those 2 pavilions, that's about 40% of the show that attracts over maybe 300 to 400,000 people every year. That's shut down.
Right.
There's no, and that's supposed to be coming in June. There's no way that happens. So, like, this is going to affect every single industry, and we're talking about basketball. And I'm sorry, I'm turning this into an episode of Light Skin Opinions right now.
No, that's fine because I don't really think we can talk basketball tonight. I don't.
It's so much bigger than basketball. And the only thing that I will say tonight, and I hate to try to make a silver lining out of something like this, is that, and I like to joke about things, but Rudy Gobert, Tom Hanks, Rita Hill, these people contracting coronavirus may finally make people wake up and realize how big of a deal this is.
Right. Well, it's not going to make it. Well, certain people, it's not going to make realize anything because right? Wasn't it at CPAC where they were calling it a hoax, and then obviously someone at CPAC got it. Look, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not an epidemiologist. I don't know anything about any of this other than what I'm reading. All I know is that if you have something that's easily passed from one person to another, highly contagious at this stage, and you're having, and again, forget the unwashed media in the locker room. You're having 20,000 people congregate in one place, and also in a situation where they interact with others who then travel around the country. It probably is not the best idea to continue playing. And this idea that was floated, which I think that, I think LeBron actually shut it down. I know he backtracked on it, but LeBron speaks for players. That's LeBron's role. Okay. People think sometimes that LeBron is just being selfish, me. But a lot of the things LeBron says publicly, and he does this even more now, but even when he was with the Heat, he was speaking for other players. Okay. And when he came out and basically said, I'm not going to play in front of an empty arena, I think people took that as him being, okay, I need to be big shot in front of fans all the time. But really, he was speaking for a lot of different players who felt that way. And again, he does speak to it all the time. I remember being in the locker room. It's funny they played Charlotte tonight because I remember being in the locker room when the Donald Sterling stuff broke. Okay, because that was during the Heat's first round series. I guess it would have been 2014 against Charlotte. And all that news broke during the day about Sterling and everything. And I remember walking in the locker room before the game because everybody wanted to talk to LeBron, and I kind of want to talk to Ray because Ray Allen was one of these voices you would want on a topic like that, right? So Ray was in there, and Ray pointed to me and he goes, "Just give me a minute, okay?" And he caught as I started to ask the question. I don't know why other reporters weren't asking the question that day, but I walked up to Ray and he said, "Just give me a minute." And he looked at LeBron, and then he and LeBron called him over, and the two of them called the rest of the team into the in visiting locker rooms. They're very, very small typically, and Charlotte is as well. Called them into the little training area, with the tables in the Charlotte locker room, so they could have an impromptu meeting before they answered any questions about it. And then what happened? Ray didn't talk. LeBron spoke for everybody, okay? LeBron spoke for everybody before the game about how they felt about Donald Sterling, right? But he has become more than that. He's the spokesman for the league. And so when he came out, was it 5 or 6 days ago? I mean, Giannis isn't speaking for the league. Kawhi's not speaking for the league. James Harden's not speaking for the league. There's one person who speaks for the league right now. It's the same. It's okay. Right. And when LeBron came out a few days ago and said, "I'm not playing in front of empty arenas," to me, that option was off the table. It didn't matter if LeBron backed off on it, which he did.
And also,
he was probably told to. The option was off the table.
The Rudy Gobert thing just changed the math on everything, right? Because playing in front of empty arenas, it's to keep the players safe. The players are no longer safe. Rudy Gobert could have had this disease for 10 days.
Right.
How many other players has he come in contact with?
How many games have they played since?
Let's say they've played 4 games, right? That's 4 of the teams. 4 of the teams have played 4 of the teams. Exponentially, this thing is out of control at this point. That's why they just had to stop it. The fact that an NBA player has it means other NBA players have it.
Yes. No, there's no doubt there's going to be more testing.
And that's the biggest thing. And then, listen, if we want to go outside of sports, I love when people start talking about all the documented cases. The documented cases ain't shit.
No,
First of all,
people don't know they have it.
80% of the people that are walking around with it are asymptomatic.
Right.
That means so all these there's young people everywhere walking around with coronavirus that don't know they have it because they don't have symptoms or they have very, very mild symptoms. So people have it all over the place. So if Rudy Gobert has it and he's played 4 games since he contracted it, the amount of and now we're not just talking about NBA players, we're talking about coaching staff, training staff, arena personnel, fans that have shaken hands and then touched their eyes and face, like. Everything just needed to get. And I don't mean to be an alarmist because we still have to go back to the fact that this has a 3.5% mortality rate, which I also think is overblown because you don't know how many people actually have the virus. The people that die from it, of course, it's going to be it's going to look like a greater number compared to the people that actually have it. So the mortality rate is low, but the thing is, we have to stop. I don't like when people talk about the low mortality rate when we act like the people that are sick and infirmed are dispensable.
Right.
It's
right. Well,
right?
that was, again, I don't want to. Okay, there was something that was said today by someone who occupies the White House that to me was so disgusting because when he talks about numbers like they're like, oh, it's only this many people have died, and it's like those are people who died. Okay, but if I go there,
and it's the most and
20% of our audience is going to tune us out,
and it's the most vulnerable among us. What we have to remember when we walk around the Heat Arena and arenas all over the country, a lot of the people that work in those arenas are
older,
are 65 and up, and this is
older.
something this is something they do 3 times a week. They don't have a full-time job. There's just something to supplement their Social Security or whatever they're doing, or they just want to get out of the house and they like being around people. So those people are the ones that are in danger.
Well, and the other thing is the security folks, like you mentioned, they also don't. I think what a lot of people don't realize is you'll see the same security people at the Panthers arena, at the Heat arena, at Hard Rock Stadium, at a Hard Rock venue. Like you'll see these people all around South Florida because a lot of them work for the security companies that are basically contracted out these various places. You know who else is? The food vendors. Okay, so if you're here at the concessions, right, like a lot of these vendors work at a lot. So it's like they're in one building and then they're in another building and they're in another building and they're coming across. How many people, like if you're serving a hot dog, you're at the Papa John's stand here at the arena, how many people are you serving at the Papa John's stand? How many people are you coming in contact with?
You touch the money, they touch the money.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I again, I don't want to be alarmist about it either. But I just think it got to a point, like you said, there needed to be a face on this from a sports perspective, and now Rudy Gobert is kind of the face of it, and especially because he's the face not just because he's got it, but because he was also evidence of somebody who was making light of it in the same way that the biggest idiot congressman in the entire country, that Matt Gaetz, the one with all the DUIs, the one in North Florida,
the one who knew he was exposed to it, that went to Rocco's Tacos in West Palm Beach. That
right,
one?
well, before he even did that, he was the one who wore the gas mask when he voted on it to make light of it, and then he had to self-quarantine after that. He is the worst congressperson in all of America. But basically, well, there's a couple that might be in competition, but he's
I wasn't going to say anything.
Louis
I'm
Gobert,
saving all my takes for light-skinned opinions. You can get yours out right. You might have to come on the next episode because it feels like you have some stuff to get off your chest.
Well, no, I always do, but I try not to because people then 20% of our audience gets upset that I get political, so I got to be careful of that. But I just don't think we can talk basketball tonight because there's just no basketball to talk about. Like we can. This synopsis could be 30 seconds. I mean, the Heat play down to competition, and they take teams for granted, and then they stop moving. But it almost seemed I don't know what Eric was doing tonight. I got to be honest. I don't understand the Solomon Hill minutes. I don't get why Olynyk. I thought Olynyk something happened to him.
I thought Kelly was hurt. I thought Kelly.
Me too. And I also he pulled him out of the third quarter.
Yeah, he showed up in the third quarter. I'm like, oh wait, we couldn't rebound the entire game. Why is the 7-foot Kelly Olynyk just showing up with 2 minutes left in the third?
It was a weird game, but again, none of it really matters. And I guess where we kind of closed here, and we'll do more podcasts as things go forward. I think we have a responsibility to kind of follow this story from an NBA perspective because we're an NBA podcast. From a Heat perspective, I don't know that there's going to be another statement from the Heat tomorrow. I got the sense that they're just going to shut things down. And again, you mentioned these arena workers. Everyone I saw at the end was like, see you next year. I don't know that they don't know anything. We don't know anything. But I think that the sense of this tonight was, this is the end. And if it is, man, there's a much bigger human cost here. So again, I don't want to make too much of basketball. Just from a basketball perspective, man, this had been a fun season. And it's just like,
all over the NBA, it's been a fun season.
It has.
We didn't know who was going to win the title for the first time in like 5 years. Right.
And there were a lot of good storylines, but, it's not just going to be the NBA too. The NHL is going to shut down. They have to. The Panthers they always have games in hand. They were going to miss the playoffs anyway, probably by a point. But the NHL is going to shut down. MLS just started, some excitement over Inter Miami, playing pretty well in its first 2 matches. We're just going to have to get used to the fact that there's just not going to be a lot of sports for a while. And because there are just bigger issues at play here. Now, what we're going to do as a network, you and I need to talk about because obviously there's things we got to cover. We were bringing in some great sponsors over the next couple of weeks.
We had a watch party on Monday.
We had a watch. We're not watching anything. We're just we're doing a wash party. We're washing our hands. It's going to be a wash party. Again, I don't think we should pod for that much longer because I don't want to be seen as making light of this. I'm not. I think it's serious. I hope that none of our listeners get infected in any way. I hope everybody takes the necessary precautions and puts, what's important first. With that being said, it was just a depressing, weird, surreal night here as, the Heat were trying to come back. And at the same time, people were seeing on their phones, it was one of those where were you moments, right? Like, and we've had a lot of those lately, I feel like.
Yeah.
But this was one of those, where were you when Kobe died? Where were you, I feel like we've had those, even in sports, and it just came home here. And so I don't know. I don't even know how the Heat operate at this point. Like, what do they have, conference calls with their players, basically? To keep them posted, send out emails to all the players.
Every NBA player right now, all NBA personnel, because of the Rudy Gobert thing, has to basically be quarantined. Because, like I said, in a week exponentially, it's a 6 degrees of separation.
Mm-hmm.
A week in the NBA is a lifetime. Like, you could play 5 games in 7 nights.
Right. Remember how everybody reacted to? And again, I'm not comparing coronavirus to HIV or AIDS. But remember how everybody reacted in 1991 to Magic. I mean,
Exactly.
I mean, everything is a nice, sweet story now that we're how many years later? 20 to 30 years later, and Magic is not only still alive, but is, appears healthy and vibrant and everything else as much as he was at any point in his life.
I've made jokes on Light Skin Opinions about that I will not repeat on this podcast.
Don't do it. I'm just glad I'm glad he's alive, and I'm glad he's healthy. But I remember 1991 very well. I mean, I was 17, 18 at the time, and I remember, the shock when Magic had this. It wasn't just the shock. It was, remember what Karl Malone said, which I think a lot of people have not forgotten. About not wanting to be near him, and remember the stand. I thought the best stand of David Stern's entire commissioner career was having Magic play in the All-Star game. I thought that was symbolic and showed that it was safe. But look, as far as contagion goes, I'm not comparing the seriousness of the diseases. Let me make that clear, okay? Okay, well, not the disease or the affliction.
But this is not.
But this is much more contagious than that was.
Yeah, this is not a blood. This is not blood transfusion. This is a handshake.
Just be in the same area, right? Exactly. I mean, the chances of anybody contracting HIV from Magic were infinitesimal. They really were. I mean, the Heat took. I mean, the NBA took precautions. They made new rules with the trainers, and they had to stop play when there was blood. There were a lot of things that were done that may have even been more than was necessary, but they did them. And, we got past it, and there have no doubt there have been HIV positive players in the NBA since. We haven't heard about it, and we probably will never hear about it. But I don't think that, I would be stunned if anybody actually contracted HIV from playing an NBA game. But you can absolutely contract the coronavirus from playing an NBA game. There's no question.
I mean, it's guys just bumping into each other, sweating. I mean, right. It's once an NBA player had it, you knew it was done. Honestly, and if anybody in the training staff had it, they were going to have to cancel the season.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
shit. If somebody in the media had it, they might have.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
They might have. If somebody in the media who was in locker rooms tested positive, they might have
to shut everything down for 2 weeks while you get tests. I mean, do we have tests?
Yeah.
Okay, don't answer that question.
That's a topic for light skin opinions. I mean, according to the administration, there is no coronavirus. It's not. Its stock market is strong. I don't know. I'm going to stay away from all that. All right, we'll do more podcasts going forward. We're going to continue to kind of address everything that's happening. Obviously, if we have a lengthy hiatus, we will figure out a way to make this entertaining in some way, and maybe do some Heat Stories episodes. There's some places we can go with the podcast, but obviously we're going to let this kind of settle for about 24 to 48 hours probably, and then come back to it. We had plans to cover the games on Friday and Saturday. Obviously, there will be no games on Friday or Saturday. I just don't. I guess the final thing, Alf, before we go, it's not just the virus part of this; it's the logistical part of this. I just don't. I almost think like the NBA's only option would be to just shut the season down now. It's going to be totally unfair. You can't, let's say that you just in 3 weeks the coast is clear. How do you do that? Because you're going to play how many games? You've already canceled all these games. It's not fair because certain teams have played more. Some teams more.
My personal feeling is you find out who's played the most games. Let's say someone's played 65 games. I'm just pulling it out there. Or you say 65. Okay, we're all going to go to 67 games, right? Somehow figure it out how to get to 67 games for every team and then start the playoffs.
I don't think you can though, because some of these buildings are not available. It's going to be a weird. Think of what the Heat's next trip was going to be, right? It was that Chicago, Indiana, Milwaukee. I don't know the order, but it was basically like the NBA structures these trips in a certain way. So you had like these 3 Central Division teams that the Heat were going to play back to back. But those games are not happening now, right? So I just don't. To me, the only option is for the league to basically say season is over.
Start the playoffs.
We're going to start the playoffs whenever it is the coast is clear.
Yeah, or just cancel it and start it over next year.
And right, and I'm sorry. You're sorry to the teams, but the NBA has a little bit of a. There's one blessing for the NBA this year. is there are not a ton of teams in competition for the playoffs. So if you look at let's do this. I know we said we're going to end the pod, but this may be the last one for a little while too. So let's do this, okay? If you look at NBA, okay, if you look at the NBA standings right now in the East, I mean, it's basically been settled, right? I mean, there's not a lot of debate right now, like who's going to be the 8 teams. I mean, Washington is how many games back of Orlando?
I think
they're
4,
5.5 games back. Okay, so in the Eastern Conference, Milwaukee was going to be the 1 seed. Toronto was 3. It was 6.5 back, but 3 ahead of Boston. That's enough of a cushion that you can say Toronto's the 2.
The Heat lost ground again.
But right, and so the Heat are 2.5 behind Boston and 2 ahead of Indiana. So it's not a tie or anything like that. So you can put the Heat in the 4. Okay, so it's Indiana and Philadelphia. Who was going to be 5? Who was going to be 6? Well, it's not deciding home court, so it's not a big deal. Okay, one's the 5 and one's the 6. The Heat would open with Indiana. Brooklyn is the 7 and Orlando's the 8. Again, I know you don't want to play Milwaukee, but there's not that much difference. I mean, between 7 and 8. So I think you're okay there too, right? So I think in the East, like I don't think there's really anything to settle. And in the West, the Lakers are 5.5 up on the Clippers, who are 1.5 up on Denver, who's 1.5 up on Utah. Okay, so there's 1 game separating Utah, Oklahoma City, and Houston for the 4. Fine. Dallas is comfortably in the 7, and then Memphis is 3.5 up on Portland for the 8. Up on Portland, New Orleans,
you know
and
what,
Sacramento.
like, nobody can complain.
You could just settle it. You just settle it now. And you were talking about 65 games. I'm looking at the West. So it's from the Lakers on down, 63, 64 to Clippers, 65 for the Nuggets, 64 for the Jazz, 64 for the Thunder, 64 for the Rockets, 67 for Dallas. Fine, but they're 3 games back of Houston, Oklahoma City in the loss column. And then 65 for Memphis. So you've had enough games now. Remember the lockout shortened season was 66 games, right?
You have a representative sample, and listen, you could end this, and anybody could have their gripes, but right now, if you're 3.5 games out of the playoffs, too damn bad, right?
Right.
You would look
you had 66 games, yeah.
You would look really, really silly trying to. I mean, even if you wanted to get everybody to 67 games, that doesn't give any of the teams outside of the playoffs looking in a chance to get back in.
No, it doesn't.
So even if you went up to 70, it gives you a really small chance.
Yeah, so, that's why I think this is over. I think the regular season is over. Give this, a full month, okay?
And that gives you 16 arenas to figure out.
And then you basically you allow teams a 3 or 4 day training camp, okay? And then you start the playoffs. That's the only
I think that's best case scenario
in my mind. I think that is the best case scenario. All right, the best case scenario for us is to end this podcast. Anyway, we're not going to get into a ton of detail tonight about other stuff and our sponsors, but we do want you to check out Doral Toyota. We do want you to check out DutchVF.com for Dutch Valley Farm, a couple of our great sponsors. And we have some more sponsors that are coming on board, but that may wait a little bit. We'll see. Anyway, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Regional Sports Network.